Colorado, upset alert. Most people who think that are not actually thinking about football.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Whatever you need, we've always got you covered. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time, of course. We're talking more Big 12 chaos teams later in today's show. I don't think Colorado's necessarily in that conversation. And UCLA is going to hate their realignment move for this year. I'll tell you why later on today's show. But that's Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, joining me on today's show. Here's my theory, Kevin. Deion Sanders has barred reporters from asking him questions because he doesn't like the things that they write about him, and there's a guy who used terms like false prophet and all these other things. He didn't like that, and so he's not allowed to ask questions. And CBS, a guy who was just affiliated with CBS, couldn't ask questions anymore because, CBS did something that he didn't like. That stuff comes off to me as thin-skinned and rubs people the wrong way. I get that. That does not mean they're going to lose to an FCS team. I know North Dakota State is good. They are going to be without their All-American safety, Chris Wisniewski, but I think that for Colorado, they should be expected to win this game by double digits, and I think they are going to. I've got the Buffs 38-24 in Boulder.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack here. The media thing is a whole thing in and of itself. I would say the CBS one is a little more valid, but obviously it's Coach Prime's world and we're all just living in it. I can elaborate on that if you want. If not, I can move on. North Dakota State, though, realistically, they're a challenging team. And I think people are in this – there's two modes where it's like, one, like you said, people don't like Deion Sanders, so this would obviously be an absolute perfect time for them to lose when it's the standalone kind of – not standalone, but it's the primetime game on Thursday night. North Dakota State's an FCS power. They've beaten Power 5 teams before, Power 4 teams before. But realistically, Colorado has way too much talent. And they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They have one of the best overall players in the country with Travis Hunter. They've gotten better everywhere. And North Dakota State has a first-time head coach. They have a quarterback who's not the most elite passer. He's a really good athlete, and he can throw. But I just feel like you said, it's more of a personal thing than a football thing. And realistically, if Colorado loses, I think that says a lot more about the state of the program than it does about sort of North Dakota State.
Yeah, I think those media interactions take a whole different tone, more towards the people that don't like Deion Sanders if they do lose this game, because that would be an abject disaster for the Buffs, which, again, I do not see happening. Now, you mentioned the quarterback. I don't think that's a huge concern if you're North Dakota State. They don't typically rely on elite quarterback play. Yeah, Trey Lance went there, but there's a program that historically, coach to coach, year to year, wants to be a power-running football team. So the transfers on Colorado's defensive line are going to be tested. But just to make a final point on this, people want, some people, those who do not care for Deion Sanders for various reasons, you think whatever you like, they want him to fail. They want him to lose to an FCS team. They want him to get embarrassed. They want those things to happen, so they project that out and they kind of talk themselves into it. I want the Mariners to win the World Series. I'm not sitting here talking myself into it because they're not even going to make the playoffs. And Colorado will lose games this year, and there will be people that will wildly overreact. I expect Colorado to make a step forward. I think they're a 6 or 7 win team. My official prediction is 6-6. I think this is a win. They have one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. As you mentioned, there is a huge discrepancy. I don't care who North Dakota State puts at quarterback. There is no FCS football player who is a signal caller as good as Shedeur Sanders or as proven as Shedeur Sanders. And I think the Buffs are going to come out hair on fire, win the football game. I think that 38-24 number, I think that's kind of a backdoor score. I think Colorado could be up 21-7 in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of really great points. I'm going to hammer home something that I talked about on my show over on Locked On Buffs, which is I think people have tied in their disdain for Deion Sanders and things that he said prior to the season about being confident in his team, wanting to make the playoff and all this. I think they've sort of like held that as gospel, where it's like Deion Sanders said they're making the playoff. Deion Sanders said they're going to be way better. So now they're holding them to that standard. Whereas, let's be real, Colorado is a team coming off of a 1-11 and a 4-8 season. The 4-8 season, obviously Deion Sanders first, was a great improvement from the 1-11 season. So if this were any other team, we would treat this team as a
as an ascending program.
Yeah,
you'd say, wow, look at how much better they were in year one,
Exactly.
and they've addressed their weaknesses in the offseason. That's what the narrative would be.
Yes.
But there's all the media discussion and Deion Sanders doing these crazy things and whatnot, and that's why it feels different.
Yeah, people can't separate sort of their opinions for Deion Sanders from just looking at the overall situation of this team. And I've tried to remind people on my show, you can't take what Deion Sanders says verbally and hold Colorado to that standard, because obviously he's a very confident guy. Another thing, go find me a coach around college football that says, yeah, I think we're going to suck this year. Or I think we're going to win 5 games. Like, no one's going to say that. But back to your point about the score, ESPN has them as 10-point favorites. They were 9.5-point favorites, but I think the Wisniewski move.
I believe FanDuel's got it 9.5. We'll double check the most updated line.
Yeah, it's around there. But I think Colorado wins by 12-13. Realistically, I think we see a different kind of Colorado offense. I think we see them establish the run.
9.5.
Okay, 9.5. So around there. And I think the defense is going to look better, right? This will be a really good test for them stopping the run, because North Dakota State, they like to run the ball. Their quarterback likes to run the ball. They have a stable running backs. And so Colorado has a chance to sort of kind of silence the doubters. Like, I think a 12 to 14-point victory, or even a larger victory, like you said, I think that would kind of silence a lot of people.
You know, I kind of feel for the Colorado side, or the fans, particularly in the online space for Colorado going into this game. Here's why. This is a no-win situation for Colorado, because here's what you're going to have. The people that want to pile onto Deion Sanders and say he's the worst thing to ever happen to college football, and I wish he would just go away or stop talking or doing this, that, and the other thing, they're going to come out of the woodworks if Colorado does beat North Dakota State by 14 to 20 points or whatever, and they'll say, well, you should do that. Of course you should. It's like, whoa. How did the narrative flip from Colorado's going to get upset to, well, that was supposed to happen. This doesn't mean anything. You can't have it both ways. So all I ask for any of you making predictions or comments about this game going into it and coming out of it is be consistent. I expect Colorado to win big. That is what my prediction is. If they don't, then we'll look at, okay, why did that not happen? Are there signs of serious cracks in the dam here for Colorado as they go forward with the schedule? But I think they're going to make a bowl game. I think they're going to win this one. And with regards to the personal and professional, assessment of Colorado, you ever see Captain America and the Winter Soldier?
Yes, of course.
There's a big spat between Steve Rogers and Nick Fury about a word that applies here. It's called compartmentalization. Okay, Nick Fury utilizes that, and it rubs some people the wrong way, but it'd be a great thing for people to use when it comes to Colorado. Separate the personal and the professional. You can have a personal feeling about what he says and does, but don't let that bleed over into your professional opinion about what Colorado is as a football team or what they should be.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's kind of like that needs to be the main message for the season. And realistically, I understand why people dislike Deion Sanders. I'm not going to pretend like everything he does is like perfect. Like I don't love him sort of like telling players to leave like in the way he did like last season, where it was like the Louis luggage thing. It happens everywhere though. Like, I'm not going to be soft and pretend like that doesn't happen in every college locker room. His spat with the media, whether people want to admit or not, happens at every program, right? We just don't see it as much, where there's reporters where it's like, hey, coach doesn't want to take questions from you anymore because of what you wrote or because of what you said. Happens all the time. Is it as popular because
I don't know if I'd say all the time.
It happens frequently though. Like every coach around the country has a reporter where it's like they don't want to talk to them. So they either,
well, there's a difference between not talking and then coming out and having a policy where you outright ban them from asking questions. These are two different things.
It's true. I'll admit that. But there's definitely a reporter at every program where the coach will say, they'll ask them a question, they'll be like, yep, we'll be good, or yep, I think this will be fine. Deion Sanders took it a step further, obviously. If you agree with that, oh well. If you don't, oh well. But compartmentalization is kind of the key here, because what Deion Sanders does off the field has nothing to do with what they do on the field. Like, if they're a good football team, we'll find out. If they're not, we'll also find out. And so North Dakota State will be a really good test of this. I think it can probably or will get a little ugly, and I think you'll agree with this. I think there's going to be moments where social media is going to go a little crazy because Colorado's going to go 3 and out.
It's a Colorado game.
They're going to punt on the first drive or
Oh,
whatever.
if Colorado goes 3 and out, Twitter's going to be on fire.
Yeah, if they go 3 and out, or North Dakota State has a big play, like it's going to be like, oh, the transfer portal didn't work. But at the end of the day, I think talent will trump in this situation. Or trump.
Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs. Kevin, appreciate the time.
Yep.
So we're staying in the Big 12 because I've got 2 chaos teams. And I mean Heath Ledger Joker levels of chaos can ensue. With more movie references, maybe. That's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks allows you to curate whatever you want to make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want. Game Time has got it. Plus, they've got all-in pricing. You toggle this feature, you turn it on, and it shows the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Might be the best thing about the Game Time website. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, it is game time. And it is time to talk about FanDuel as well, because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. This is exceptional, and you don't want to miss this offer. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Does it get any better than that? I don't think it does. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. It's that simple. Plus, everything you want gambling-wise for college football, it's all over there at FanDuel. Get ready for week 1. Get some action on the board. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. UCF, Iowa State. These are chaos teams in the Big 12. Either one could easily be interpreted as a dark horse contender for the Big 12 championship. Either one could navigate their schedule to get there. Either one could also go 6-6, 7-5, and I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I'm utterly shocked. The reason they are chaos teams is they have heavy hitters on the schedule. I think both teams are going to have the opportunity to beat someone who is vying for a spot in the conference championship game that might not care for a conference loss at that point in time, but could lose to one of these teams in any way. So let's start with UCF. I love what they have done in the transfer portal this offseason. I like KJ Jefferson. I love Gus Malzahn matched with KJ Jefferson as a quarterback because he gives some Cam Newton vibes. He's not the same level of talent. Few, if any, guys in the history of college football are. But I've always been high on Gus Malzahn as a coach. They had the best adjustment year of any of the G5 move-up teams. Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU all struggled, did not make a bowl game. UCF did. I think UCF is going to be the best of those 4 again going into this year. And I think UCF is a 7 or an 8 win team pending what happens in the second to last week of the regular season. So New Hampshire, Sam Houston, no problems there. This one, I went back and forth, but I do like TCU. I think TCU is an upper half team in the Big 12 this year. So I think that's a loss week 3 for UCF. They come back home against Colorado. I think that's a win. I think they lose at Florida. That's not a Big 12 loss. I do think they'll drop the game. I know Florida is not going to have a great record this year, but Florida is actually a pretty darn good team. If UCF wins that game, look out. Look out. That'd be a statement win for Gus Malzahn and the Knights. Cincy, W. That game's at home. Give me UCF all day long. At Iowa State. Oh, look, the team I'm talking about later. I put them on similar footing. I have different reasons to like these teams, so I'm going with the home team in that one. We'll see if I feel differently going into the game week, but right now I'd pick Iowa State to win that game in Ames. BYU at home, for UCF, that's a win. Arizona, this is an interesting one. They can win this game. They can also lose this game. I don't have this, though, as the one toss-up that I can give to a team. I have this down as a loss. But could UCF win that football game? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do believe UCF can beat Arizona. I think they are on that sort of level. I'm not as high on Arizona as everybody else. If you gave me a preseason top 25 ballot, Arizona would not be on it. So that's why UCF can win that game. That's another big one that they have at home. Couple of road games at Arizona State, and then the toss-up game at West Virginia. I know West Virginia fans think I don't like them. That's not the case. I just think their schedule is really hard. That game's a toss-up to me. These are two middle to upper tier Big 12 teams. It's in Morgantown. I don't fully trust West Virginia. I have a stronger inclination, frankly, to trust UCF than I do West Virginia, because I've seen a lot of Neil Brown-led West Virginia teams, and yep, they have a solid core and a coach who was going to be fired until he shocked the entire conference last year. Is that sustainable? We'll see. We'll see. They're not beating Penn State in week 1. I think that's a toss-up game in Morgantown. Penultimate week in the regular season. Then UCF with one of their biggest wins. This is a chaos moment. I think Utah goes 11-1 and loses this game in Orlando to UCF. And guess what? If I'm wrong and Utah goes 10-2 instead, and both of their losses are in conference play, let's say they lose to an Arizona or a Kansas State or somebody else because this conference is going to be so wildly entertaining and up for grabs, that could keep Utah out of the Big 12 championship game. Chaos team. UCF, 8-4 or 7-5. We'll see how I feel about the West Virginia game and, frankly, the Arizona game going into it. Iowa State, I think, has a higher floor because I think their schedule is much more manageable than UCF's. 9-3. I've got the Cyclones at 9-3. North Dakota, that's a win. At Iowa, I think between that and at West Virginia, they split those games. I've said Iowa and Iowa State is a toss-up before. It probably is. It's a sub 3-point spread. It's at Iowa, but I think I like Iowa State a little bit more. It's just, can they go on the road and win that game? They've lost 7 of 8. We'll see if they can turn the tide. Arkansas State at home, win. Houston is going 1-11 this year. That's going to be a win. Baylor at home, I'm not wild about the Bears. Like their OC, don't know about DeQuan Finn at quarterback. We shall find out. That's a win. West Virginia, I think, we'll see. UCF at home, already said earlier, that's a win. Then comes the important stretch. If Iowa State wants to get to the Big 12 championship game, if they want to be more than just a chaos team and they want to play for the Big 12 championship game and fulfill Josh Pate's prophecy about the Cyclones, they have to win both these games. You heard what I said. They don't need to win one of Texas Tech at home or at Kansas. I think they're winning both. And who's my Big 12 championship game pick? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Utah against Kansas. I think that's the only Big 12 game that Kansas loses on the year. Or excuse me, I think they lose 2 games on the year, and I think that is one of them. And Iowa State, they could find their way into that mix. If I've got Iowa and West Virginia as a split. I think they win one, lose one, go either way, close, sub-touchdown games. If they end up losing the West Virginia game, then I think Iowa State is out of the Big 12 championship picture because they will have 3 conference losses. But if they find a way to beat Iowa or beat West Virginia and lose to Iowa, and that's how the bounce of ball game sort of goes, then you could wind up with just 2 conference losses and 3 losses on the year. I think they win at Kansas, which is being played at Arrowhead Stadium, not in Lawrence. Texas Tech at home, I think they win. Cincy at home, I think that is a win. And I think they drop their final 2 contests of the year. I like Iowa State. I just don't like them as much as Utah and Kansas. First of all, Utah is on the road. No one's going into Rice-Eccles Stadium and winning this year. Not as long as Cam Rising is quarterback. That's not going to happen. So Utah is winning that game. Then they have Kansas State at home. That could very well determine last week of the regular season whether or not Iowa State plays for a conference championship and has the opportunity to be a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. Isn't it a crazy world? It's the one we're living in. Rocco Becht is going to have a heck of an encore to try to put on for the college football world. Some people have got big expectations for him. We'll see if he lives up to them here. But I think this is a 9-3 team going 1-1 at Iowa and at West Virginia. Lose at Utah and at home against Kansas State. And whether or not they win at West Virginia could very well determine, or the Kansas State game last week of the regular season, whether they are in the Big 12 championship game. So UCF, Iowa State, chaos teams. They play heavy hitters. They are good teams. Are they great teams? I don't know. But can they knock off a team vying for a conference championship spot and not make it there themselves? You bet your bottom dollar both the Knights and the Cyclones can do just that. That was fun. I like that one. We're moving out of the Big 12. We're going to the other big. That's the Big 10. UCLA is going to have a miserable year. And I mean close to the bottom of the conference miserable. That is coming up next. This episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it hard. They've got zero sugar. They're a convenient, portable size as well, so you can take them with you on the go. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. I'm busy this time of year, and 5 Hour Energy is the exact sort of thing I need so I don't hit that afternoon lunch wall. They've got a bunch of great flavors, too. They've got watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. You can mix and match, put them in a 12-pack or a 24-pack, and they'll send them right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, guess what? You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. And this episode brought to you by Ibotta. So, if you bought a lot of sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids, or anything else this summer, and you're going to buy them next summer or going into the fall, you want to earn cash back, and you can use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on the essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time that you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. You can save on over 2,400 brands, shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and so much more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store or download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. Flash question. What was UCLA's regular season record last year? Answer, 7-5. They underperformed. They were a good team. They underperformed. Why were they a good team last year? Their defense was great. Do they have anyone back from that defense of note? Couple guys, but not the headliners. Laiatu Latu, NFL. Murphy Brothers, NFL. Kamari Ramsey, over at USC. Defensive coordinator, Danton Lynn, he's over at USC. This is a complete and total reset. And I am not high on the Deshaun Foster hire. And I am not even going to mention the press conference beyond what I literally just said. I don't think that Deshaun Foster has a chance to succeed at a high level this year. So their win total opened at 5.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. And once again, the power of Locked On College Football was demonstrated loud and clear because I went and told you all to hammer with your life savings in the mortgage under 5.5. Oh, what do you know? It's down to 4.5. They could start 2-0 and not win another football game. There's a world where that happens. They could start 1-1 and not win another football game. There's a world where that happens. Two things working against the Bruins here. Number one, three things actually. Their quarterback play is just all right. I do like a couple of their weapons, admittedly. J. Michael Sturdivant, that's a real football player on the perimeter. Good football player. Logan Loya, good player. They got a good couple of receivers. They've got a very average quarterback. The good news, silver lining here, you're in a league in which quarterback play is going to be pretty mediocre by Big Ten standards. It's not going to blow you away this year up and down the conference. I think Dylan Gabriel's the top guy in the league. Will Howard's up there, but we could look up and a true freshman named Dylan Raiola over at Nebraska could be one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the league statistically by the end of this season. because there just isn't a deep lineup of supremely talented veteran quarterbacks. Will Rogers at Washington flies under the radar in that discussion. But UCLA is 95th in returning production. They have a first-time, first-year head coach. There's a lot of new in Los Angeles. It is a transition year. It's a bury the tape, establish a culture, and try to find some recruiting wins, some of which they have. And I give Deshaun Foster credit for that. But I am not wild about this hire. I'm not optimistic about the long-term outlook, but I am most of all down on what this season is going to be for UCLA. I think they are going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Indiana could be in there as well, with Curt Cignetti taking over a less than ideal situation, but guess what? They play in week 2, and I kind of have that game as a toss-up. I do not have a major reason to pick UCLA to win that football game. Ethan Garbers is fine. Are we going to pretend that Ethan Garbers is going to go tear him up with a brand new offensive system and go for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks? No, he's not that sort of guy. They were a defensively led team a season ago. And you can say whatever you want about that season and the head coach who was a part of it. They were a defensively led team. And the most important players from the defense, they're gone. 95th in returning production. You don't have crazy recruiting classes. They're not bringing in mega talent via the portal this year. So low hopes for UCLA. They are going to feel the sting of going to the Big Ten here in year 1. If the Pac-12 had stayed together, though, and these moves had all transpired, yeah, they would have felt that anyway because there are plenty of good teams out west. But Hawaii, week 1, they should win that game. Hawaii's not a great Mountain West team. They could be a little better, but they struggled with Delaware State in their first game more than they should have. And okay, UCLA should be able to win week 1. Last year, a 3-9 Stanford team went to Hawaii and got a victory. UCLA probably does the same. Week 2, at home against Indiana. Look, I think they're going to split a couple of Big Ten home games, and those are going to be the only Big Ten games they win. Indiana week 2, and then a month later, they host Minnesota. Indiana would be the far more likely of those 2 games. If UCLA loses week 2 to Indiana, 1-11 is on the table. It is on the table if they don't win that game. I'm giving them benefit of the doubt because they're at home. That's it. But then the schedule just gets brutal. They go at LSU, that's a loss. Oregon at home, that is a loss. At Penn State, that's a loss. Then the Minnesota game. They go at Rutgers, at Nebraska. Those programs are light years ahead of where UCLA is going to be this year. Those 2 games are losses. Iowa at home. How many points do you think an Ethan Garbers-led offense? If they get to 14, I think that'd be a pretty good game against Iowa. They're not going to beat the Hawkeyes this year. At Washington, also in the midst of a massive rebuild. Who's had the better offseason? Answer, Washington. At home, better quarterback, better roster. Huskies winning that game up at Husky Stadium. Then you play USC. I think the Trojans are going to clean UCLA's clock in a revenge game from a matchup they felt they should have won last year, which going into it, they should have, and then they lost. And that was a pretty massive disappointment for the Trojans, and certainly was a feather out of the cap for Lincoln Riley and company. So USC, that's going to be a loss. Last week of the year, Fresno State comes to town. Interim head coach Tim Skipper at Fresno State, taking over a program that coming into this year expects to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Mountain West who have proven themselves more than capable of beating Power 5 opponents, UCLA included, by the way. That could be a marquee win because no matter what a Power 4 school is doing, if you were an interim head coach and you go into Los Angeles and you win that football game, that's a major statement to make yourself the full-time head coach. So you know the Bulldogs, depending on how their season's gone, and frankly, it might not matter either way for what I'm about to say, they're going to be playing with their hair on fire. They're going to want to win that game. And UCLA is going to be coming in off 5 straight losses, maybe even more. Maybe even more. You're at home, I'll give UCLA the win and pick them to go 3-9. And I tell you what, I'd pick 2-10 before I picked 4-8. This is a reset year. This is Deshaun Foster learning on the job as to how to be a head coach. This is not a roster that is ready to compete. And this schedule is brutal. LSU, Oregon, Penn State, at Rutgers, at Nebraska, Iowa, Washington, USC. This is a gauntlet. And frankly, let me give you a piece of optimism here to end today's show for UCLA fans out there. It is a good thing that this year is going to stink. Because as schedules rotate in conference play on an annual basis, you have years where the schedule is easier. You have years where the schedule is harder. You're getting a hard year scheduling wise out of the way. This might be the toughest schedule in the entire Big Ten. Ohio State isn't in there, but Oregon is, and Washington on the road is, and Penn State is. I mean, you don't have Michigan, thank goodness, but USC is in the mix. Iowa, at Rutgers, at Nebraska. They are going to be underdogs they'll probably be favored. They're favored over Hawaii by double digits. They should win that game. They'll be favored over Fresno State, I think. I don't know. We'll see how the season goes. Week 2, they'll probably be favored against Indiana. They're probably going to be underdogs in at least 8 of their games, if not 9 or 10. They could be underdogs in 9 games this year. It's a brutal schedule. You get it out of the way. You have your head coach learning on the job, establishing a program, no expectations, no worries, nothing. I think UCLA is going 3-9. That's best case scenario. You know what? I'm changing on the fly. I don't think they're going to beat Minnesota. I like PJ Fleck more than I like Deshaun Foster. You know why? I've seen PJ Fleck coach games before. I think he's pretty good. Is Minnesota's team great? There was a weird betting movement in that line for their week 1 game on Thursday against North Carolina, where they went from a 2.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point dog. Vegas got to know something. I mean, Vegas knows something. That's a dramatic line shift there. But I think they can beat Indiana. Might be close to a toss-up, but I'll take them 2-10. I think UCLA is going to go 2-10 this year. I don't think that's an indictment on Deshaun Foster in the long run. I think it's an indictment on what the situation has become over the last several years with UCLA football. You can blame whoever you'd like. It is going to be a rough year in Los Angeles for the Bruins. So I'll take them 2-10. 2-10. Well, actually, I'd have to pick them to lose that Indiana game. All right. 3-9. 3-9, final answer. They'll beat Indiana, Hawaii, Fresno State. Everything else in between, I think it's going to be a loss. Final answer, 3-9, UCLA. Going to be a tough season. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.